Hey everybody, Sumi back with a bit of Genshin Impact for you. We're going to be looking at the Battle Pass weapons, and more specifically, the Viridescent Hunt, the Battle Pass bow. And we'll get into that in just a moment. I want to start at the top here. Let's first just go over these briefly. I'll kind of discuss my thoughts on the Battle Pass weapons if you're trying to decide what you're going to pick. I just hit BP 30 yesterday as a result of clearing Spiral Abyss 8-3. Quite the pain, but here we are. So the Black Sword is the weapon that initially I was going to pick until I decided I just wanted the uniqueness factor of this bow. So the Black Sword is scaling up normal and charged attack damage, which is strictly this. It's strictly swinging or whatever the charged attack might be for a character. Typically it's just some kind of flourish. It's a one-handed sword though, so you need somebody like Jean or the main character. So that's totally fine. So you're getting an increase of just a flat 20% damage dealt by the auto attacks, basically, which is cool. It's a crit base, 6%. At level 50, that turns into roughly 18%. At 70, I'm assuming it's about 24%. So it's a big number for your main DPS if you're trying to scale crits. And then this awards you a bit of HP whenever you score a crit. Can occur every 5 seconds, so it's a nice lifesteal sword. It's pretty unique in its own right. Initially, I was going to pick it. I decided that I wasn't too upset about not picking it just based on the fact that Jean does very similar, except it scales for the whole party. Let me just quickly discuss what I'm talking about here. Let's see, where are we at? So hits by normal attacks have a 50% chance to regenerate HP equal to 15% of Jean's attack for all party members. So not only does she have her own source of like lifesteal on auto attacks, it's healing the whole party. If you stack that on top of her Dandelion Breeze Elemental Burst is what these are called, I believe, you already got plenty of healing based on her. You don't need her. And I don't typically see a situation where you're not going to have a healer in the party. Like, you're probably not going to pick the main character and put that sword on him and say, okay, I've got heals for the main character and the rest of the party don't need them. Because the rest of the party will still take damage on switch in. You will get worn down. I just don't think it's a formula for success. So while it is a very cool weapon that would allow Jean to honestly do a lot more damage, she'd heal up slightly more based on this talent here because of the extra 20% from the sword. I just don't think it's necessary. It's probably the most orthodox pick if you just want a strong weapon, but again, unnecessary. Serpent Spine's kind of a noob trap. I hope I don't offend anybody by saying that. So here's the deal. 6% more attack damage every 4 seconds that you don't take damage while they're on the field. Stacks up to 5 times, so after, let's see, 20 seconds? After 20 seconds, you're dealing 30% more damage. That alone would be fantastic. I would like this weapon. It's a crit-based weapon that does that. Cool. Unfortunately, that also means you're taking 18% more damage, which you really don't want to be doing deeper in the Abyss, because some mobs hit really, really hard. And typically, your artifacts, you're going to want to focus on attacks, since most things are kind of time trial oriented. So you're not going to want your characters that use Claymore to have a ton of HP stacked or a ton of defense stacked. You're going to want your artifacts to have things like flat attack, attack percent, crit rate, crit damage, LE mastery, LE recharge. Doesn't leave a whole lot of room for physical mitigation or HP stacking, so you really don't want an additional 18% damage taken. But even if you could mitigate that, that would be fine. The real issue here is that you lose 1 stack when you take damage, and it doesn't list any sort of window, like grace period, between that. So, like, let's say you're standing in fire and you're taking a fire tick every 1 second. After 5 seconds, your stack is gone, right? So, initially you might be thinking, this is a high skill gap weapon, I'll just dodge everything, or I'll just switch the characters out so they don't lose their stacks and stuff. It sounds cool, but honestly, after playing Risk of Rain 2 and using items similar to this for quite some time, this is just a noob trap. It's never going to work the way you think it will. We can't all just sit here and pop Adderall and play this game, and never take any damage. It's not possible. You're going to take the damage, and then you're going to wonder why it doesn't feel good, and you're going to regret your decision. Please don't take this weapon unless you are absolutely sure that you can handle it and that you want to put that much effort into using a greatsword. I'll leave it at that. I'm sure some people are going to disagree, but honestly, it's just some of the parts of this game do mimic something akin to a bullet hell where you have enemies behind you, you've got elemental effects all around, suddenly fire combines with electricity and you're taking a big burst of electro damage. It's just not a weapon for this game, in my opinion. Catalyst is fine, if not a little underwhelming. Normal attacks increase Ellie skill and Ellie burst damage by 20%. This is fine. Crit rate's pretty high, but I just feel like 20% is not really enough to justify the labor of love that's going to be like trying to cycle these, unless your main character is a mage. If you're using like Mona as your main DPS, I think Mona uses Catalyst, right? I'm pretty sure she does. Anyway, I could see this being okay for somebody like her, but I just don't feel like the 20% is all that necessary, and you gotta like weave in some auto attacks and stuff. I think typical players are probably not going to be leading with a mage, so switching in and having to do extra bits of work is probably not the way you want to go, because if we think about it like in a typical situation, you're probably doing like starting with Fischl because she has a longer E. You'll pop her bird, pop Xiangling's E, pop Barbara's E, and then switch to your DPS to proc the book that Barbara has. In that time, like these cooldowns are all ticking, and you don't have a ton of time to spare, so you want to get over to your DPS as quickly as possible. So like if I were to switch to Barbara and have to like press E and then auto attack, or then auto attack and press E, you've wasted like a second or two there. Plus, Barbara she can use this book, which just increases the next character out's damage by 48%. This is insane. This is a stupid book. It should not be in the game. And then if not, you've also got this, which is additional heals. Synergizes pretty well with her, but I don't think that's necessary once again. But yeah, I just don't really see a lot of room for this Catalyst unless you're a hardcore Mona main, or you, like, I guess want to anticipate more DPS mages coming out in the future. Crit base is cool, though. And then this guy, there aren't very many polearm users in the game. We don't know what Zhongli is going to be using, and we probably don't want to use this on Xiangling. Reason being is Xiangling uses Dragon's Bane, which is this nice passive. Enemies affected by Hydro and Pyro take an additional 20%. Pretty dope. Elemental Mastery increase, which is what you want on her for the most part, in my opinion. So, like, this is a cool weapon. It obviously, like, is intended for you to nuke bosses with an additional 24%, or do better in, like, group fights by giving you a little bit of physical mitigation. So it's not bad. This is a fine weapon. It's got a high base crit. If Zhongli like uses a lot of crits and likes this kind of thing, then you might wish that you picked this. I just don't see it. It's a little too generic for my taste. And finally, we have the bow. It's a crit-based bow, and then attacks have a 50% chance to generate a cyclone. Now, first I'll go ahead and tell you this cyclone is not anemo damage, but it's also not typeless damage. After some testing, I've confirmed this cyclone deals physical damage, meaning that it's subject to physical mitigation, and it can crit. So this damage that's taking every half a second can crit, and its crit damage is based on the character's crit damage that's using the bow. So it's giving you some soft CC in the form of a circle that sucks things towards the center. You can think of it kind of like a mini Venti ult. The radius it's about 5 meters wider than Venti's E, but probably smaller than his Ellie burst. It's kind of hard to tell the range of that thing since it hits kind of everything. This is about 5 meters wider than his E, and it's a fair amount of soft CC. It kind of acts as a slow since mobs typically try to walk out of it but get sucked back into it. So you can kind of hold the mobs down and do whatever you need to them. 40% of attack as damage is fine. This does scale off of the character's total attack value that you see on the attribute screen. We'll talk about that more in a moment. So every second, basically, it's dealing 80% of your attack damage to everything inside of it with a cooldown of 14 seconds. That's fine in itself. I really like it. But let's go ahead and take a further look at it now that I've got it. So it's just shy of 18% crit base at level 50 on Ascended. And we're still looking at the same numbers. Once we figure out how to refine this thing, though, every level of refinement appears to increase that damage tick by 10%. So it's using 50% of your attack instead of 40. At max refinement, it'll be taking 80% of the character's attack and dealing damage every 0.5 seconds based on that. And we'll be able to bring this down to a 10-second cooldown. So 10-second cooldown, 4-second uptime. So it's a 40% uptime on this. So basically, you should be able to pop this every time you character swap, or if you lead with Fischl, you should be able to just keep this up 40% of the time, dealing additional damage. It's very good. So let's go ahead and slap this on Fischl if she doesn't already have it. Now we're going to use Fischl for this because I think Fischl and Amber are the two characters that you can use this bow on. Venti, unfortunately, is not a character that you're going to want to use it on. And here's why. First of all, my initial thought was his Constellation 1 would make this thing huge. I was thinking that the aimed shot firing 2 additional arrows would be able to trigger 3 different cyclones at the same time because they're coming out at the same time. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Only one can trigger at a time, so that makes the synergy a non-synergy in this case. To further kind of discuss why he's not great for this, whenever you ascend a character, they each get one individual stat based on the character. So in Venti's case, whenever you ascend him, he's getting... Actually, this doesn't show that it's going up. Interesting. He might already be at cap, but energy recharge is his base stat that increases whenever you ascend him. In the case of Fischl and Amber, I can't really show it to you because they're not ready to ascend at the moment. Maybe Amber is. Yes, she is. They get an attack percent increase, both characters do, upon ascension, which scales with this bow because what this bow is using is this attack value here, or in Fischl's case, this attack value here. So Fischl's got 656 attack. That's a pretty big deal. She doesn't have any artifacts on. I don't know why that's showing. 1 second. Let me just figure out where this extra damage is coming from. There shouldn't be any. Let's just take a peek. That's very strange. Alright, bear with me just a moment. Okay, now it's gone. But there's still 49 additional. I don't know where that's coming from. I guess let's just let whatever might be ticking right now run out. Maybe it's a character swap passive. I don't know. With no artifacts on, that number shouldn't be there. Okay, well, I guess we're just gonna be looking at 459. It doesn't matter too much, because after some testing, I found that the bow uses this number, not your weapon number, not your artifact number, it's just this number here. And we'll do a bit of testing to explain how I know that shortly. So right now, no artifacts on, and just the bow. Let's try to teleport. Never mind, there's some right there. We just need a group of mobs to test this on. Once we test it, we will run out. So let's keep an eye on that real quick. Bear with me just a second. I'm just going to jot some things down off screen that you're not going to see. So at 459 attack, let's see how much the damage is ticking for on crit and off crit. So without artifacts, her base crit damage is going to be 50%, so we should see bold numbers that are 50% higher than the non-bold. Let's go ahead and hit this up, if it'll proc. Okay, so 81 and 122. Just record that real quick. So I've tested quite a few mobs, and I've been able to tell that this does deal physical damage, first because of the mitigation, and second because of artifacts. So what I mean by that is these hilichurls and slimes have the same amount of physical mitigation. So if I hit a slime, it'll also deal 81 right now. The Sisson mages and the pyro mages, however, have less physical mitigation. They take roughly 100. So let me just go ahead and teleport over here so we can show that. I apologize for how long this video is going to end up being, but hopefully it will help you at least make an informed decision. I'm still kind of on the fence about whether my opinion is correct here because I just don't have the means to test everything I would like to at the high end of the game. Let's just swing down here for just a moment. There's a Sisson mage on this beach. So right now what we're really doing is I'm just attempting to prove the point that this is indeed physical damage. I've got two means of proving it. The first is the fluctuating damage, so we know it's not typeless or true damage, just based on the fact that it's going to deal different damage to this monster. It'll deal far less to a Ruin Guard because Ruin Guards have very high physical mitigation, especially when they're standing. I think their physical mitigation drops a little bit when they're not standing anymore, like when you knock them down with a shot to the eye. We can use this guy. He has the same as the Sisson mage. Well, let's try to get at the proc. Oh boy. Yes, 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 you're very cool. Okay, so you can see it's dealing 99 and 149, which is higher than the 81. So let me go ahead and record that real quick. 99 and 149. Pyrocyssin. And then to Hilly Trails, it was 81. So far you can see that the damage does fluctuate, meaning that just based on this alone, we can tell that it's probably not typeless damage unless monsters have some kind of mitigation towards typeless damage, which doesn't make any sense really. But beyond that, what we can do is say that at 459 we dealt 99 damage to that thing. If we put on full artifacts and record that damage, we'll be able to get a little closer to what we want. So let's start here. We're going to use this guy. You can see the stats here. I'm limited on what artifacts I have access to, so just bear with me here. We'll use this thing, and we'll get some crit. Okay, so this number is not actually entirely correct, I don't think. Let's switch back over to her attributes page. So we're getting an additional 749. So that puts our damage up to 1,159 at the moment. And you'll see that as a result of that increase, we can calculate this. Let me just walk over here without drowning. That would be slightly embarrassing. Hopefully I can remember where that guy was. I think he was right around this tree, was he not? Okay. So if you remember, we dealt 99 damage with non-crits to him a moment ago. 251. So with our current stats, we're dealing 251 to him. And we can ignore the crits just because there's additional crit damage. So let me run away and reset him, and then I'll do some quick maths and discuss with you guys what our findings are here. Okay, he is resetting, so let me pull up my handy dandy calculator. The screen's going to freeze for just a moment while I do this. I'm just going to talk you guys through what I'm doing. So at 459 we dealt 99. At 1159 we dealt 251. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 459 and divide it by 1159. So taking our earlier attack and dividing it by our new attack. That gives me 0.396. So we're going to take that 0.396 and multiply it by the 251 we just dealt, and we should get around 99. And we did. So you can see that the mitigation difference is obviously apparent here. And you can also tell that based on the fact that it didn't change in any kind of unreasonable way, we can tell that it is indeed using this attack stat here with artifacts and with the bow and everything. So this scaling this number up, attack, just like the description says, is going to be what increases the damage of the dot. So I just wanted to confirm that first of all, because of translation issues and because of poor wording. Sometimes things don't actually use the stats they say. But with that, we can confirm that this is indeed correctly being used. And from here, the way we actually figured out that it's physical damage via the second method is, let's go ahead and take all these artifacts off. Remove, 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 and we will put this on. So I got this from clearing floor 8 of the Abyss, and you can see it's got a retarded amount of physical damage right here. So the extra attack damage we're getting on the character is 505. So let's do some of that same quick math real quick. So we had 459 attack at base and dealt 99 damage to that mob. Now we're at 505. So if we take 459 divided by 505, we have 0.9089. If we multiply that by, let's see, how are we doing that? I think we actually need a new attack number first. Okay, give me just a moment to kind of wrap my head around how that's going. We can actually do this in reverse. So let's do it like this instead. So we'll say 505 divided by 459 is 1.1. Multiply that by the 99 we dealt. So typically we would expect to be, this math is a little bit wonky because I did it in reverse order, but typically we would expect to deal around 109 damage right now. just based on this attack here. But my assumption is it's going to be much higher because of the physical damage increase. So 109 would make sense if this was not physical damage. Since it's physical damage and we've got an additional 44% physical damage on that artifact, this should tick for much higher than 109. And we're going to see right now. 157. So let's go ahead and run away from him real quick. Sorry, oof. Ouch. My thoughts did get slightly disjointed there because the math wasn't quite adding up. Been a while since I had to bother with percentages and things like that, so you'll have to forgive me for that. But hopefully that did get the point across that the increased physical damage from the artifact actually is a method of scaling up the damage from the bow's damage over time. And if you're wondering, the reason that Fischl revived instantly is because of Barbara's Constellation 6 passive. Once every 15 minutes you get a free revive. So that's kind of where we're at for now. Now beyond that, if you wanted to further try to scale this bow up and make some kind of build around it, let's say that you're using a combination of Zhongling and Fischl as your main DPS with a Barbara on the side. Your fourth can be any fire type you want. I've only got Amber. So if you swap that in, 2 fire types gives your party, every member of the party, an increase of 25% attack, which is going to be reflected right here. It's this number, so we've gone up 100. If we switch out and give her full artifacts now, the correct artifacts that is, pop that on, pop that on. Okay, what was our other artifact? Was it this? I think it was this. And then finally this. Make sure we've got the right sets. Yes, yes, yes. So now with Amber in the party and the additional 25%, we're up from 1159 to 1262. So it's a noteworthy difference. So one thing I do want to really cover here is not this. This. Fischl at Ascension 4 gets Lightning Strike. And if a character triggers an electro-related elemental reaction when Oz is on the field, the enemy shall be stricken with Thundering Retribution, dealing electro damage equal to 80% of Fischl's attack. So if you're thinking what I'm thinking, this is scaling off of the same number here that the bow is scaling off of. And it specifically says that it's going to be using Fischl's attack at all times, just like the bow does. So what I mean by that is, if you take the bow, you shoot something, and it leaves the cyclone on the ground, and then you switch characters, it's not going to reflect the new character's damage. It's always going to reflect Fischl's attack. So let me try to get an accurate representation of what that looks like for you real quick, since there's some guys here. So we hit him, 224, still hitting for 224 even with Barbara out, and she has like no attack. So you can see nothing changed there, so it's permanently going to be using Fischl's attack value, just like that Talon at Ascension 4 is going to be using, so there's a really cool synergy there. So while Vinti doesn't really have a synergy, Fischl has quite a few synergies with this bow, coupled with the fact that at level 70 it'll have roughly 24% crit rate if things keep going the way they have been. Yeah, see, we're at 50 and it's gone from 6 to 18, so at 70, probably 23, roughly 23% crit. That's kind of huge, so that's allowing her to get up to, once again, 66.6% crit fairly easily. That's without optimal artifacts. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover here. Just to point to that artifact one more time so you don't have to back up and look for it. This is the artifact that has physical damage we use to test. It has an additional 43.4%, and that's not a plus 20, that's a plus 14. This thing is going to be like plus 60% physical damage bonus when it's maxed. It's actually nuts. I got really lucky on this one. But anyway, yeah, so this totally affects it. You could very easily get an artifact set. Well, I say very easily, but sometime in the future get an artifact set that scales phys damage, both attacks, and then both crits. Put that whole set on Fischl, and probably have a very interesting kind of build to show off with this bow. Yeah, that's going to do it for me. If you guys have any questions, or if there's anything I was unclear about, or you want me to test anything else with the bow, I will very, very gladly test things further for you. Leave me a comment below. I'll get back to you within 24 hours about it. That way, if you're on the verge of making the decision and you're just curious about some small thing here or there, I can very easily just test it out for you, give you some feedback. you know, just give you an informed decision, because I know fear of missing out, FOMO, is going to really plague everybody as far as these weapons are going, because it's like, if I pick the bow, then I'm missing out on something that I might not see again here, because the sword is pretty cool. But just trust me when I say it's not going to make a huge difference, because all of these mechanics are mostly in the game. The bow's just a little bit different, but yeah, thanks very much for watching. I appreciate your time, guys. Hopefully this helps some of you. If you want to leave me a like, it would help a lot. If you want to subscribe for more content, I'd really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.